The Life, History, Religion, and Literature of the Ancient Egyptians by E. A. Wallis Budge continues with Chapter 5. Egyptian Temples, Gods, and Priests. The earliest god houses, or dwelling of the god in Egypt, was made of reeds, or small branches of some tree laced together and held in position by wooden stakes driven into the ground. It was circular in form and resembled the huts found in many parts of the eastern Sudan at the present time, and many of the churches in Abyssinia. At a later period, the opening in the hut which served for a door was elaborated, and a rectangular portal was added to the reed or wicker work structure. On the top of this, the symbol of the entity within was sometimes placed, and presumably the offerings to him were laid before it. The earliest name for this dwelling of an entity was Pre. In late times, Repi-weeper, door of the divine house, door of God's house. Next were added a plinth and then a step. Now we definitely see the general square with a rectangle with a little square with it. And sacred spaces were important, but it's like, well, this whole room really, I've wanted to have it all open, but I only have one spot open for most people. But this is a place dedicated only towards serving the divine. And certain rules are followed for this place. It's not that certain things done outside of here are unlawful, certainly, getting dressed and going to the bathroom and that sort of thing is... But a lot of temples, people would sleep and would carry out their regular lives. But yeah, it's, sacred spaces are places of particular presence, particular purpose, and for the very least, you have to admit that has a psychological ting to it. It's like, okay, this place is set apart. So when you enter it, when you witness it, when there's a universal place in the world that people face in prayer, just the mention of it it has a psychological effect. And the more people involved with it, the more potential this effect has, even in the collective unconscious. The general form of this door was perpetuated in the shrine, which is placed in every large temple, and was always regarded as the special dwelling place of the entity of the temple. The roof of the door of the house projected in front, and was supported by two poles, and these in latter times were represented by the decorated pillars that supported the roofs of the shrines of the great entities and of the state pavilions of kings, who were also thought of as gods, or at least were calling themselves gods. In early dynastic times, the dwelling of the entity was made of unbaked bricks, which in turn were superseded by stone. Then the name house of the entity, Hatchur, which, as I said, the rectangle with the little thing, the battle axe, or just the with the thing, and hut, the furniture, was made to describe the shrine, the building in which it stood, and its precincts of the temple of the earliest dynasties. Nothing is known, for no remains of them exist, and the famous temple of Osiris Abydos has not been completely excavated from the ruins of the sun temples built at Saqqara by the kings of the 5th dynasty, which have been excavated in recent years. It is clear that the object of the cult was the sunstone, which had the form of a pointed stone and was set on a truncated pyramid. The stone was called Bun, or Bunbun, and the chamber in which it was placed was called House of the Bunbun. Bunbun. Before it were the vessels of receiving the blood of the victims. that were sometimes human beings, and along the sides of the great courtyard were rows of chambers in which the sacred properties were kept. Now, as much as this does not sound up to modern things, and I'm not saying that we need to perform human sacrifices or anything like that, but let's be real. When killing of animals and even humans was considered a sacred act, people were more hesitant with it. There was a context to these things, and less of it. Millions of people, hundreds of, versus millions of people, thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people that get killed or face violence. So it somehow curtailed the thing. But when people are purely greedy for the material gain and they're killing for that reason, it perpetuates a lot more killing. That's why people say any spiritual path. If you're on any spiritual path, you're better off. Well, that's a general statement. There's some exceptions, but in general, that's true. The walls of the passage were decorated with bas-reliefs. The funerary temple of Mentuhotep of the 11th dynasty was built close to the pyramid tomb of the king. It had courts to the north and south, a great forecourt, and a hypostyle hall. The Temple of Amun, built at Karnak, Thebes, under the 12th dynasty, was a comparatively small building. In the center of it was a small chamber or sanctuary, which probably contained a statue of the entity. It was repaired or rebuilt, and greatly enlarged by several of the kings of the 18th dynasty, who turned the Temple of Amun and its precincts into what may well be styled a temple town. Reper. Yeah, that doesn't sound right. Sound like you're saying raper or something, but reper. From the buildings at Karnak, we see that the worshipper approached the first pylon, i.e. a gateway with a tower on each side of it, by wide dramas, or pathway, on each side of which was a row of sphinxes. One statue or more of the king and an obelisk stood on each side of the gate of the pavilion.